Okay, we'll be starting in just about a minute. We just want to make sure everyone has enough time to get in. Okay, I think we'll start. Welcome to the Acunet ERP User Group, the first of 2026. I'm Jeff Morin, the Acumatica Implementation Project Manager at Acunet, and we have a great customer success story to share with you today, along with a super exciting tech talk to follow. At Acunet, we see the benefit of these user groups as being able to give a voice to businesses that have gone through an ERP transition, which allows you to learn from their insights and the gains that they've made and some of the mistakes that they've made as well. And instead of just hearing a sales pitch from us or hearing from your consulting team on what we think is the best option, these types of webinars give an additional voice to the conversation and an important one that may align more closely with your team when you go through the process of deciding to move forward with an ERP system. A little housekeeping for the webinar. The lunch certificate will be sent early next week, hopefully by Monday, with a link to this recording as well. So watch for that. It'll come from me. And feel free to ask any questions that you have either in the chat for the Teams meeting or in the Q&A section of the Teams meeting. And what we'll do is we'll monitor those questions as they come in. And then after each section, we'll address those questions as they happen. So for Boston, his questions, and then if you have questions for Tricia for the Tech Talk, we'll address them at that time. But first of all, I want to officially thank Boston so much for agreeing to share his point of view and his story at TechSolve in this webinar for our attendees today. Thank you, Boston.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And then also Tricia and Becky, if you could introduce yourselves. Tricia first.
Yes, hi, I'm Tricia Carlson. I have been working with Acunet for over 25 years. I've actually also been working with TechSolve for many of those. And so we have been on our journey together with both SL and now Acumatica.
Thanks, Tricia.
Hi, yeah, my name is Becky Kukis, and I have been with Acunet for about 12 years now. And I wanted just to give you a little bit of background about Acunet. We've been around for over 35 years, and we've done Dynamics SL since 1989 as far as implementations, and now Acumatica since 2012. We also have the IT services division of our company that's located in the Columbus or the Franklin County area. So those are primarily smaller clients that have offices in that area, although our ERP side is, nationwide, but primarily most of our customers are, in the Midwest. I invite you to go to our website and check out our capabilities.
Sure. Thanks, Becky. And Boston, did you want to give us a little background about your experience in general and then your connection with TechSolve and tell us a little bit too about TechSolve in general?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a controller here at TechSolve, and I've worked in multiple industries. This was my first foray into the nonprofit world, but I've previously been in property, architecture, and merchandising. And so a little bit, I've kind of had my hands in several different systems, some industry specific and some what we call, I guess, a more general system. And both systems were new for me when I got here to TechSolve. Dynamics SL was new, and then when we switched to Acumatica, that was brand new. TechSolve itself is a nonprofit organization that specializes in manufacturing solutions and consulting here in Ohio. Essentially, we help small and medium manufacturers that wouldn't otherwise be able to get support at a more affordable price than the big guys.
Thank you. So let's roll into this discussion on the challenges TechSolve faced in the selection of the right ERP system for you and the process for making the right selection.
Yeah, we took this ERP switch pretty seriously. We had a very unique challenge of working with commercial, local manufacturing clients, but also with the government, both federally and at the state level. And so it requires our accounting to be pretty unique in that, if you get grants from different departments of the government, they all have different rules. Sometimes you're capped on what profit you're allowed. Sometimes you're not allowed to have any profit. And then commercially, you're doing these projects just like a normal business would. And so we have to have different cost allocations and different setups. And then also just a really good project tracking system so we know what's going on. It's a lot to manage, a lot to keep track of. And then for compliance and government regulation, it's required. It's just required to have really good records. You're going to get audited a lot. And so at the end of the day, we needed a system that could handle those aspects of our business.
What ERP system did you come from?
We had Dynamics SL, and it's old. Microsoft ended up splitting. They had all these different, more specific types of versions of Dynamics. They kind of have one big catch-all product now, and so there were elements of that old system that we liked: the project tracking, the ability to do some custom allocation work. However, it was starting to show its age. And I think, for that reason, Microsoft decided to sunset the product. So we kind of had a forced switch on our hands, Jeff. And with that came the opportunity to make a really good new decision. So take the best stuff we like from Dynamics SL and try to find a system that would modernize it, give us fancy dashboards and the things that these new systems like, as well as track our fringe, our G&A, our overhead, more grant related items, and be able to build these in a way that works for us. Just to give your listeners an add-on of like what kind of stuff I'm talking about. If a vendor was to charge us $100 and it's a nonprofit job, our system would need to add our cost, even our overhead cost and our G&A cost, into a project so that we can still bill that and capture our true cost. And then still get that out as a nonprofit at a nonprofit rate so that it would show, zero revenue at the end.
So can you tell us a little bit about the selection process you went through, the other systems that you took a look at, if you don't mind?
Yeah, we were a Acunet customer, but we kind of did not let that get in our way of a selection. We wanted to have a clean, unbiased view. Acunet, at the time, I think you guys still are, we're doing Dynamics to Acumatica conversions. And so we knew that was one option, and we really liked the team at Acunet, but we wanted to make sure it was still the best decision for TechSolve. There's a lot of products that have hit the market and a lot of changes to products over the years. So we reached out to a couple other implementation teams. We talked to a specialist about NetSuite. We talked to a specialist about Microsoft Dynamics, their new version, and then did deep dives really with Acunet and then a couple other implementers. to look at these other systems and just figure out what is going to work for us, specifically with our challenges, with our we knew we wanted a project management system that was strong. We knew we wanted a system that would allow us to build things that we needed to be built, both from a reporting standpoint, from a dashboard standpoint, from a allocation standpoint, and then have all of that not change the out-of-box experience, because we still wanted it to be fresh. We still wanted it to be able to receive timely updates from the provider. And then, of course, we wanted to move to the cloud. Dynamics SL, where we were, was all server-based.
Perfect. Can you tell us, back hitting the allocation rules for projects and the billing rules, can you tell us a little bit about what you do with that at TechSolve? I know you hit on it briefly before.
Yeah. I think, like a lot of companies, we split our companies into different divisions or product lines. Or, everybody does this a little bit differently, of what you want to track, how you want to track cost and revenue, and how you want to see it. And so for us, we track our company by different divisions of the company, but we also needed to track whether projects in those divisions are on a grant, whether they receive some kind of a supplemental funding, whether they're just truly a commercial project. Are they allowed to make profit? If we do make a profit, how much? Do we have to report it to which government body? And so there's a lot of tags and stuff and items that, once you're 4 months down the road of helping a client, do you remember all of them? And so you need a system that will just do a lot of this work for you, tag it, and there's not a grant nonprofit system out of box that I could find that just does all of this natively. But Acumatica could allow you to very easily build your own allocations and your own billing rules. In our case, billing is separated from revenue. Both of those are realized separately because our projects are kind of more of a construction, I guess you can call construction accounting, where they get done as work gets done. We realize revenue. So billing and revenue needed to be separate. We needed to have all these allocations for G&A and overhead. And Acumatica just really let us do those things. It let us, and not in a complicated, we spend, an insane amount of hours building them. But even on the fly, I still build them to this day. I can build a new allocation rule in just under an hour.
Good. I mean, that's one thing I have to say. I'm impressed by you being a power user of Acumatica. You got right in, got your hands dirty, and learned that process through the testing phase of this to be able to do that going forward. And just as a follow-up to your comments, Tricia is going to be sharing some of those steps and setting up those project allocations and the billing rules as well. So, Boston, I've assumed that you've gone through a few audits with TechSolve. Can you share with us what you've done in designing the system so that way you could get the answers that you needed when they were requested from you, from your auditors?
Yeah, I think I regret that it wasn't a major concern of mine on day one as how will the system act in an audit, but it ended up being a pretty cool strength for TechSolve that I was a little bit unexpected. Every good system should have a decent amount of reporting that you can rely on, that you can pull down, and Acumatica certainly does. The one thing that just really came in handy is Acumatica allows you to build a lot of these little extra tags. So you can kind of just tag a project or tag an item with and you guys might know the better word for it. I can't remember what it's actually called, but essentially attributes, I think is what they call it. You can add attributes on a lot of different items, and it doesn't affect anything in the back end. It doesn't affect your ability to get updates, but it does allow an extra field for you to filter and search when you're running reports or You can add them to custom tables, like, hey, show me everything that I've tagged with this grant, or that's this type of project, or that's it. Even you see those wall of counties behind me. We even track what county a project was done in. So if somebody says, hey, how many customers have we helped in Butler County, I can pull that, and that's important to us. And every company has their own metrics they like to track. And so when it came down to an audit, they would ask us questions, sometimes very specific questions, and we could get them a pretty fast and timely answer because of things like attributes and Acumatica. And it just ended up being a strength for us, and we were able to handle a lot of requests federally, even from the state, and then even with our own auditors locally in a pretty timely manner. I was just impressed by that.
Great. And you also mentioned how you wanted to go out of the box with Acumatica. The attributes is an out of the box feature, and it allows you still to isolate and dice, your information, the data that you have in the system any way that you want to on reports or GIs or anything. So good use of that for that. And I guess now that you've passed the finish line and have been operational for some time, in retrospect, how do you think the implementation went? We have our view, but how do you think the implementation went, and what considerations do you recommend for the attendees that are listening?
Yeah, I've worked in 4 industries. This wasn't my first implementation, but it was a little bit strange because of our nonprofit situation and all the specific needs that I think we had. I will say that Acunet did a great job of scheduling out and giving me my expectations. I think some of it's on me. I didn't always hit my deadlines at the same time as implementing this system. We were moving our building. We were under audit, and so we just had a lot of items going on. And I hope I wasn't too stressful, for you all hitting those deadlines. But we did end up reaching our goal, getting things in place on day one that we needed to have it here. And in my view, Acumatica has been very successful. The team here, especially the non-accounting users, the people that don't care about it day to day, they don't enter it day to day, but they just want to see what's relevant to them.
Right.
They are very happy, which means that, we did a good job, I think. If you can open Acumatica as a user in the company, see what you need to see to make real-time data decisions, and then that's all the accounting, of course, behind the scenes. In my opinion, Jeff, I think you just need to have, when you're looking for a system, you need to focus on what you must have. Then you can kind of build what this would be nice to have, and then work on these are the luxury items I wish I could have, and then see what you can get in each of the systems that you're reviewing. For us, we got all of our must-haves, and then we even got some of those luxury items because they happen to be built in, or we figured out how to use it later. The one really nice thing I would like to say about you guys is you even trained me you didn't drop me when the system was built. You trained me how to use the data in the back end, the tables. I had sessions where I got to learn to build my own widgets. And then, of course, I could build on that. And then it ended up being where I could feel comfortable changing the system and the experience myself, even without you down the road.
Which led to the next question I was going to ask you about the successes that you've experienced as you come up on Acumatica. And I think for us, that's the number one success, is that you're excited about the product enough to get in and learn how to do those features. And instead of, I always say, your employees coming to the accounting department all the time asking for a report. I need that report now. I can't do my business until I get it. You're creating things for them where they can actually not necessarily have to enter the data to get that report, but they can see it right when they log into Acumatica. So were there other successes that you wanted to share, that success that TechSolve achieved in this transition?
The biggest success really has been real-time data. Accounting, first and foremost, needs to report financial earnings, needs to, for us, we need to provide a board with, how the quarter is, how the month went. And then, but to me, that's just like surface level accounting, is providing the bare minimum of how your company's performing, but it's always in the past. And where accounting can really benefit the company and become invaluable or super valuable is when accounting gets to the point it's putting in real-time data as it receives it and reports it out to users. And so where TechSolve's project management just night and day from SL to Acumatica was when we could stop those requests of I don't understand how many hours I have left. I mean,
Right.
time data goes in, expense data goes in, allocations run. Everyone knows exactly where projects stand in real time, and project managers have been very complimentary of they're able just to do their job to manage their teams so much more effectively.
That's really good to hear. I mean, I was involved with your implementation, but I didn't hear all this after the fact. And that's what we're always pushing for in that, to make people more independent and just gaining the information they need to do their jobs. And I'm glad to see that that is happening. So what type of future plans do you have for Acumatica? Because you get, I think initially you get phase one, to get your financials up and going, then dashboards to get the information off to your employees. But Acumatica is big and beefy, and there's a lot there. So do you have future plans going forward?
Yeah, I think every company's dream is to have a one system plugs into every department. We've been around 40 years, so unfortunately for us, we use a different CRM, we use a different HR solution, we have a different accounting system, and so Acumatica is great in that it could partner with some of those other ones, but partnering and fully implementing are two different things, and
Definitely.
so we still are very happy with many of the plugins and companies out there that plug into Acumatica and work with them. For example, my credit card partner I got solely because they work with Acumatica, my processor, and I'm very
Mhm.
happy with that. I don't see a day I ever change it. They've been fantastic. But
Cool.
something like our CRM or our HR system, there's still a little bit of manual data that needs to be done to do payroll, for example, because we just don't have a perfectly seamless thing. And so, as the budget permits and as time permits, those are items that you would love to get done, right?
Okay, so any other advice you can offer our attendees on some things to consider when you're going through an ERP migration? Having been through it yourself, any kind of roadblocks or things to consider going forward besides doing the testing?
Just take your time, do your homework before you start the process. In my opinion, an ERP implementation is one of the more important decisions a company can make because it's either going to go horribly wrong and you're going to have to start over and it's expensive. It's just expensive because there's so much work. You're going to have to pay an implementer and a system to do because transferring stuff from one system to another is a time consuming thing. And so it's just better to take that little bit of extra time beforehand, figure out your needs, and then don't be afraid to vet multiple people. I mean, I think the biggest pain of that, Jeff, is you give your phone number out to a lot of salespeople,
Mhm.
um, but it's just important to really take the time to make sure you're evaluating all of your options. I was already an AccuNet client, and I trusted you all, but I still went ahead and did that vetting
Right. Yeah.
process. And I'm grateful for that. I wrote a multi-page pro and con list, figuring out, this system has this system has that. What do we need? And then I still took that to our board and made sure that I didn't have any bias and couldn't see past my own nose. And then, the board looked at it all and said, no, from what we have, what we're going to. AccuNet and Acumatica are definitely the best solution that we can see here with the data we have. And it ended up being such a seamless transition that in hindsight, 2020, there's not a doubt in my mind we didn't make the right choice.
It's good to hear, on our end too. It's like we hope that, potential clients go through that same process because we want total buy-in to Acumatica at day one when we start the implementation process. We don't want anyone thinking, oh gosh, I wish I would have gone to NetSuites or 365 or done some research other than that, because it just makes the process a little bit bumpier, going through it. So we certainly appreciated that. And we could tell, and that was what your enthusiasm in learning those allocations and billing rules in the system as a whole, and compliments to your team as well for doing that. So thank you so much, Boston, for sharing your story today with us and with the group. Now we would like to transition into a little bit of a tech talk presented by Tricia Carlson on Acumatica project allocations and then billing rules. So I don't see that there were any questions or anything in the Q&A, but at the end of this, we wanted to say if you wanted to facilitate a conversation with Boston, to just talk about the process a little bit more, we can do that for you. So Tricia, would you like to step in at this point?
Sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So I am going to be just kind of doing a general overview of the allocation rules. Boston has indicated how important those are in his decision and the different ways he uses them. So project allocations can be used to create milestone billings for transactions to bill budgeted amounts. You can also allocate transactions at a specific rate using rate tables. You can allocate transactions using a percentage markup. And then you can also use it for posting overhead, like fringe and G&A to projects as well. So we'll start by looking at an overview of the allocation rules screen. So let me get that open here. So first I'm going to open a allocation. So you'll see in the screen here, there's different sections. The left section is the name and the steps. So an allocation can have an unlimited number of steps. It could be very simple with 1 or 2, or it could be 10, 20, or 30. So for each step on this side, there are 2 different tabs. So there's the calculation rules, which say, how are we going to calculate the amount to allocate? And then the allocation settings tab, which says, this is what we're going to do with the amounts that we just calculated. So now I'm going to review a couple of types of common allocations so you can see a little detail about the options. So here I've opened an allocation rule that's very simple. It has only 1 step. And as you can see, we're telling it to allocate a budget amount. The option is a budget versus transactions. So for this one, for a milestone, we're telling it to go look at the budget for our revenue group, and then it's going to create an invoice to bill for that amount. So if I go over here in my project screen, this is a project that I know is set up as a milestone project. So here, if I look at my setup briefly, I have these 3 tasks with milestones. They're set up to do a task completion. So basically that means when the task is completed, the allocation when run will go out and it will look at the revenue budget amounts and create an invoice. So here is where I say, go look at my revenue, go look at my budget. And then on the allocation side, once it grabs that amount, it's going to go ahead and for this particular one, it's going to post to the GL and it's going to hit unbilled AR and unrecognized revenue. So now it's sitting in a bucket waiting to be billed. When I run my project billing, it's going to grab anything out of unbilled AR and actually create the invoice on the project. So that is the milestone overview. Next, I'm going to look at some time and materials. So this one has a few more steps, as you can see. And each step does things a little bit differently, which is why I picked this one. So over here, the first one is labor. So if you have users entering time cards or any kind of a GL entry that records labor hours, this will take anything in your labor, and it's going to take the quantity of a time card or a labor transaction and go look at a rate table. And that's how it's going to know how much to charge to your project. So here, if I go over and look at a rate table, and rate tables can be set up as simple or as complex as you need them to be, just like the allocation. So this particular rate table is only looking at the labor item. However, you can also write allocations with rate tables that look at projects, project tasks, even employees. So however you need to sort and group and grab your data to apply a rate, you can set up that as well in the system. So here you'll see for this particular labor item, the rate that is going to be billed is $200. So when the time card is entered, you'll have the actual cost, but then when you go to bill for the project, this is actually what's billed to your customer. So the next step on this is material. So Boston had mentioned that he, may have a transaction come through AP that needs a markup before it can be billed to the customer. So this is an example of what that would be. So here again, we're telling it to take unallocated transactions, which would be the AP in material. This time it's taking the dollar amount. So it's taking the flat amount from the AP bill. And again, it's going to a rate table to find the amount. Now here I could do a rate table, or if I know what my markup is, I could say the amount times 1.2 and it'll mark it up to 20%, and that it can be billed that way. But here again, we're using a rate table. So if I look at my material rate table, here I'm looking at the account group. So anything that hits material then will have a 1.2. So it's 20% markup. So next we have our travel expenses. So here again, if you have a expense report or an AP bill, this here is a little different again, in that it's taking the amount, but it's using an attribute to grab a rate for markup. Boston mentioned attributes. There are an unlimited number of attributes that you can create for a project to track different things. He mentioned location. It's unlimited again and how many you want to do. This particular project has an attribute of expense markup percentage. So here that allocation rule will come to the individual project and look at the percentage, and that's how it will record the amount that gets to be billed. And again, as with the other steps, they're hitting the GL and hitting unbilled so that when project billing is run, it will go and grab them. And then the last step in this particular allocation rule is subcontractors. So subcontractors are similar to labor, only they're probably entered through, accounts payable. And again, it's taking the quantity from the AP bill and multiplying it times the rate in the rate table. So that is an overview of some time and material. The last one I'm going to look at is more of a overhead markup. So here you'll see this one only has 3 steps here, but they're all burden. So instead of looking at a transaction such as AP or a time card and billing a customer, this is just tracking the burden rate on a project. So here we're going to start with labor. Again, we're taking labor, and then we're going to take the dollar amount and look at a rate on the rate table. So this time my rate is a burden rate as opposed to being a labor rate. So again, here you'll see again, there's a lot of different rate types you can do, and this one is burden for this time. So here's a 20% burden rate, and I've got this particular rate table set up to look at both projects and account groups. So any project that's added into this rate table along with any account group will get the 20% markup. And that is for the internal burden rate. So my next step is materials. So again, it grabs anything from material and it goes and looks at the burden rate to get the amount to mark up. And then the same thing on the other burdens. It grabs, only this time we're doing multiple account groups. So instead of just pulling labor, just pulling subcontractors, this is going everything from the subcontractor account group to the travel account group. So this is grabbing a bigger bucket of information for this particular allocation. And then over here with all 3 of these steps, the allocation settings, which is again says what we're going to do with this amount allocated. Instead of posting to the GL and grabbing it for billing, it's just going in a bucket called burden. So when I look at my project and I look at an overview of my income, expense, and transactions, there will be a bucket called burden that I can see as a separate line item when I'm trying to evaluate my projects. Okay, so that is
Tricia,
kind of an over. Oh,
if I
go ahead.
can cut, if I can cut in here, I think the one thing that scared me, I remember when I first was looking at this screen was, um, you're typing a lot of almost like HTML type codes on that calculation rules screen, and then there's a lot of boxes on this screen, and then I think one thing that really helped us out is we had you guys, our provider, build our first, like, this is what we need to do. This is what we're trying to achieve. And Becky and Tricia, you both built our allocations out, our starting ones. And then I was able to look at these screens and down the road figure out, okay, this is what this does, this is what this does, and understand it and then play with it. And so that when new scenarios happened with the company, like, oh, I don't want to charge this cost on this specific item, like supplies, I could go in here and tweak it and edit it and make new allocations. And so I think that one of the cool things about this system is that these screens allow you to do so much. There's so much power here, but someone who has the experience can build the first couple, and then you can slowly become more of a power user yourself.
Yes, thank you. And that is usually what happens. Boston, you're for sure one of our more power users. We have customers that will call us anytime they want to change to an allocation or a new allocation. We have, customers in between that will do small things and call us for big changes. And then we have Boston. Boston will write his whole brand new allocation from start to finish and go, oh, look, I think it works. So, okay, that was what I had to go over on just briefly showing the power of allocations. Is there any questions? Or Jeff, we can turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tricia. I don't see any questions showing up now, but I did want to say that if any of you want to reach out to us and then you can get a little deeper dive into projects and, Acumatica in general, please feel free to reach out to us for that. Becky, if you wouldn't mind sharing the last slide of that PowerPoint presentation, it has my email address on there. And I just wanted to say, Boston, thank you so much for participating in this. You are a success. It's good to see that you're up and operational on it and you don't have any issues or regrets for switching to Acumatica. And even hearing your story now at this end, it's kind of moving. I'm happy you went through it, and it's just a good testament to the product and then the process of preparing yourself for that change, which is admirable. Tricia, thank you so much too for sharing your tech savvy knowledge on projects and billing rules, because it is a real powerful piece to Acumatica. And if you're using projects and need that, and especially when it comes time for an audit where you have to prove out what you build, there you go. It's right there for you. So thank you all the participants that were here, and please watch for an email from me next week. I'll have a link to this recording, but it's also going to be available on our YouTube channel. So if you go to the Acunet site, there's a ERP side, and then you'll be able to find the YouTube channel there. And I'll also send that Grubhub certificate for you to use at your will. So and if you wanted to have an additional information or discussion with Boston, you can reach out to me and I can facilitate that as well. So thanks again, folks, and enjoy your day.